Good evening, everyone. This is what we'll be spending our time in the minutes we have left looking at, the certificate of fellowship, and we'll be going through the points, and hopefully we can get the most out of it in the time that we have. Okay, let me read a prayer thought for you, and this is from Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 43, page 24 to 25. The Lord's voice crieth unto the city, and the man of wisdom shall see thy name. Hear ye the rod, and who hath appointed it? Comment. You have now heard God himself recommend that you hear the rod, yes, the shepherd's rod. For since Micah's day, the shepherd's rod is the only rod that has spoken, the only rod that you can read and what? No, we are reading this, but at the time when they heard this for the first time, were they hearing it or reading it? They were listening to it. So at the first time this came across, it came across orally as something they had to listen to. Now, let's say someone who was there and listened to the words, not reading it, walked away and rebelled against what they heard. Would they be judged by what they had listened to? Yes. So if one lacks the ability to read, one can also listen to the message. And many people today can't read, but they can listen. So the Lord made provision in the knowledge increasing, so we can read or we can listen. On your fellowship application form, and you see the check box, I am applying for check 1, the certificate of fellowship, or answer book 5, page 84, membership. So you can be a certified member or answer book 5, page 84, membership, and we're going to read that. Now the first statement states, in applying for the fellowship of certificate in the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, I hereby solemnly affirm before God that I believe the shepherd's rod is the last message to mankind, that Bashan is God's present true pasture and storehouse today, and that the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association is ordained, and that reference is found in the Leviticus, page 12, by God to accomplish, Leviticus, page 2, the work for the church, and also to finish the work for the world with a loud cry, and that's found in Leviticus, page 13, and we should be all clear at that. And we are listening to the discourse today. And so, as Brother Houghton stated initially, before the message came across in words, we know that it was spoken in his sermon. So point 1 on the application form, it states, I have read or carefully listened to all of the required Shepherd's Rod publications. If applying for full membership, or I will read all the required literature of the message within 2 years, or if not, yet available in my language as soon as it is. So you can listen or you can what? Read. And what the Lord has done, he has made provision for both. And as knowledge has increased, the Shepherd Rod literature or publications are both in MP3 form and it's in the paperback edition. So whichever form that someone is comfortable with, if they can't properly read English, but they can listen to English well, they can still go through the message. And it states here, carefully listen to all the required Shepherd's Rod publications. And we're clear with point 1. Okay? The Shepherd's Rod teachings and doctrines. And each point that we're going to go through for the remaining time, we're going to give supporting rod references. Volume 2 of the Symbolic Code, number 2, page 7, states the following. The Shepherd's Rod message to be no separate denomination, and that exactly as predicted in early writings, page 277, its teachings had power and force to all the authoritative SDA doctrines. So whatever doctrines the Shepherd Rod message brings across, it has power. And so the Shepherd Rod message is teachings, and it brings out doctrines. When you look at your application form, point 2, this is what it states. I unreservedly subscribe to all the doctrines and teachings of the Shepherd's Rod message. All of it. Not some, not part. All of it. And we're clear with point 2. And so, in following the foregoing symbolic code, we follow all the teachings and doctrines of the Shepherd Rod message, and it is brought out on the application form. Point 2. Keys of the kingdom. And probably another time we'll spend a longer moment as a Sabbath study to go through these points slower. Keys of the kingdom. Timely Greetings, volume 2, number 29, page 9. The keys of the kingdom, you see, pass along from one generation to another, from the patriarchs to the prophets to the apostles, and down to what? Our day. Today, as we're speaking. Plainly then, the keys of the kingdom of heaven are in the hands of those who have the truth for the day. And this brings us to point 3 on the application form. 3. I believe that the keys of the kingdom today are with the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, and that they will remain with this association all the way to the kingdom. We're clear? All the way to the kingdom. The keys will be one place from now straight to the kingdom. So, wherever the keys are, the chariot is. Wherever the keys are, the chariot is. The chariot. The helpers, the officers, and authorized shepherds of this association. Track 1, page 37, over through page 38. The fact, therefore, that from the chariot the Lord commands the prophet to go speak, bear the message to his people, and that the message totals over 1,250 pages of literature published since 1930, unfolding its truth from different angles, solemnly reveals that the chariot, though invisible to human beings, as to the young man, were the chariots which covered the mountains, 2 Kings 16 verse 17, has already arrived, and since it's already here, it must of course be the divine instrumentality through which, as a sort of base of operations, the Lord is ordering and directing his work, and through which he shall do so until this gospel of the kingdom be preached into all the world for a witness unto all nations, and the end come. Matthew 24 verse 14, the end, the unbelievable. So the chariot is here to organize, order, and direct the work. And from wherever the chariot is, we're told in Leviticus of Davidian Seventh-day Adventist, page 6, that the regular officers of this association shall be a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer, and that all other officers of this association shall be appointed. The same point is brought across in Timely Greetings, volume 1, number 2, page 19 through to page 20, but brought out a little different way. Matthew 10 verse 3, to him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. The porter, the one in charge, opens the door only to those who have complied with the requirements for admission. In other words, the Lord is plainly telling us that no one may dodge the porter's inspection and forever get by. And yet, in spite of this warning, and in spite of the fact that to go through the door is even easier than to climb over the fence, Some choose to take a chance, stealing their way in, pretending to be in the faith, thus getting into the sheepfold and hoping to take over or to get a following. It is, however, not possible to induce God's true sheep to follow them, for they know the true shepherd's voice. Only those who gain entrance through the door, and to whom the porter, the one through whom the spirit of prophecy is manifested, opens, are the authorized shepherds, whose voices God's sheep hear. Also shepherds call the sheep by name. They are well acquainted with their flocks, because they are intensely interested in them, and they carefully lead them in and out. Here the student of present truth will note that by this illustration Christ points out that the only shepherds that he recognizes as his are those whom the porter opens the door and invites them in. The student will also know that all others are branded as impostors, and the sheep that hear the false shepherd's voice, he declares, are not his sheep. Point 4 on your application captures those points from the rod. I believe that God's chariot is at Bashan, and that God himself is leading and directing this work through his appointed servants, the porter/president, Timely Greetings, Volume 2, page 19, and his helpers, the officers and authorized shepherds of this association. We're clear? Amen. Credenda and agenda. Membership. Section 1, page 5 of the Leviticus. The membership of this association shall be composed only of persons who subscribe to the whole credenda and embody in their lives the whole agenda of the aforesaid association. And this takes us to point 5 on your application form. I am striving by God's grace to embody the teachings in my life, in my ideas and theories, habits and practices. One selected message, page 128, paragraph 1. Christ our righteousness, page 121, paragraph 4. And 154, paragraph 4. I wholeheartedly, A, embrace and support the association's governmental structure of Davidic Levitical order as codified in the Leviticus, page 6, section 1, point B and C, and 2, 1 TG 2, page 22 over to page 23, and Timely Greetings, number 41, page 24, paragraph 1 and 2, and that B, believe that the association's publications are binding up the testimony, Isaiah 8 verse 16, produced in its Carmel publications, and C, subscribe to all the advanced Christian standards of living set forth in Timely Greetings, volume 2, number 38, page 13 through to page 25, each one of which I am in full conformity with. And this is embodying the entire message, the whole agenda and credenda, all the whole credenda and agenda in our life. We're clear with point 5. Health. Symbolic Code, volume 3, number 2, page 14. That thou mayest prosper and be in health. One of the most common perils which we have, for one, to keep out of, and in which many lose their way, is that of taking an extreme position. There are multitudes who cannot keep in the middle of the road. They let Satan lead them to the edge of the Christian's pathway, and as it makes but little difference to him from which side of the road he trips them over, he lets them choose the side of the road that most appeals to them. Hence, some go into extreme in the right direction, while others go in the wrong. No. Point A on the first page. Sign up to be in the middle of the road. I abstain from all the inebriating and health-destroying substances, including, but not limited to, coffee, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and all other unhealthful herbs and drugs, and that I also abstain from indulging in all flesh food, while instead of eating a healthful vegan or vegetarian diet, that I likewise strive to avoid all unhelpful practices in my life, while regularly engaging in vigorous, age-appropriate exercise, that if overweight, I will strive to glorify God in my appearance by regaining my natural weight, that this and everything else in my life may glorify God, being in the middle of the road. And we sign on to this 100% wholeheartedly. Jewelry. Timely Greetings, number 2, page 38, page 19. Wristwatches. In the fullest sense, a wristwatch is a bracelet with a timepiece on it and should not be worn on street or in public. Miscellaneous jewelry, necklaces, neck chains, lockets, bracelets, earrings, rings, etc. all are condemned. Dress, women. Materials. Timely Greetings, same number 38, page 13. They are to be of good quality, durable, and appropriate for the climate and occupation of the individual, nothing gaudy or extreme. The same thing for the men. Suits should be cut along conservative lines, nothing sporty or extreme. Especially should the suits be worn in the pulpit be neat and conservative. See that the suits fit well and does not hang in a ill-fitted manner. Material. The quality of the material should be durable and in keeping with the climate and occupation. Colors. Practical colors that are not flashy should be used. If the coat must be of one color and the trousers of another color, care should be taken that the colors blend well, do not appear sporty. On the whole, such combinations should be shunned. Never should they be worn in the pulpit. And that brings us to point B on our application form. A brother or sister in the faith, I will wear no jewelry, including wristwatches that are designed to be a type of jewelry, and that I will daily dress in conformity to all the dress standards of the message that apply to me as a brother or sister in the message. Every point on the application is directly from the rod. So if we have a problem with the application, we have a problem with the message, and we have not signed on for the whole agenda and credenda of the message in our life. The Lord's storehouse. A next point brought out, and the application form. And this is what inspiration has to say in answer book 4, page 63. So while it is imperative that all present true believers avail themselves of this certificate of fellowship, it is even more urgent that all such should be first and second tithe payers. Because if a certificate of fellowship is extended to those who could be but are not such tithe payers, they would become not only a demoralizing influence among believers, but also deadly parasites in their midst. For this obvious reason, the association is therefore obliged to grant the certificate of fellowship only to full-fledged believers and cheerful doers of the word. In cases where it is impossible to pay a full second tithe, then, of course, a part is acceptable. This brings us to point C. Again, C. That there be meet present truth literature in the Lord's house. I will return to the Lord's storehouse, my honest tithe, an exact tenth of all my increase, and an honest second tithe, a full second tithe of increase after the first tithe, except in cases where my fixed expensive may temporarily exceed my income. In that case, I will cheerfully submit a completed and signed second tithe exemption form every 6 months. In cases of no income, a signed statement to this fact is all that is needed to remain for the certificate. Once again, if we neglect to do this, we're not full-fledged members of the association. And so, our covenant and promise before God. We thank God, Symbolic Code, Volume 1, number 17, page 1. We thank all our brethren for their assistance in this mighty work, and we hope that with the help of God, we shall not disappoint them by falling short in our God-given privilege, as others who have not only disappointed their brethren, but also dishonored God and made the truth of none effect by stepping off the firm platform and by failing to climb up the ladder of truth, which leads to our eternal home. And so we are pledging before God, inspiration brings out, and we're thanking him for all that he has done in bringing us our God-given privilege. Point D captures the same point. D, I promise, with the help of God, to be a true commandment keeper, a strict vegetarian, a sincere health reformer, and a faithful steward of the Lord's means. In short, I fully support the association's whole agenda and credenda, the Leviticus page 5, the work and teachings of the association. We are clear? We are to give ourselves to Christ. We are to give ourselves to Christ, to live a life of willing obedience to all his requirements. All that we are, all the talents and capabilities we possess are the Lord's, to be consecrated to his service. When we thus give ourselves wholly to him, Christ, with all the treasures of heaven, gives himself to us. We obtain the pearl of great price. And all of the above, we sign on, date, print our name, telephone number, email address, mailing address, our signature, and dated. And all that is on the application form is from the message. And so, in closing, shortly, who is eligible to receive the certificate of fellowship? And this is from the application form. Many have asked who is eligible to lead in the service of the work. The answer that goes out from Mount Carmel, and no from Bashan, is that anyone not holding a fellowship of certificate of fellowship cannot be a dividend teacher. He can listen only. Yet just the granting of a certificate of fellowship is a cheap thing. That in itself would have no significance. Who receives a certificate? Those who have personally studied all the message and believe it. Those overcoming temptation. Those complying with all the requirements. Those who put their treasure where moth and thieves cannot enter. Those who keep all the commandments. Those who are not flesh eaters, junkers, or tobacco users. Those who do not rob God of tithes and offerings. We would freely give literature to those who ask for it, but that does not give the light. It is only when one appropriates the oil, the truth, to his everyday living, that oil becomes transformed into light. It is when one pays this price and thus becomes eligible to receive a certificate, signifying he has complied with all the requirements, that he has the light. Hence, though we can freely hand out tracts, we cannot freely hand out certificate of fellowship. All the parables show different lessons. That is why there are so many parables. The one of the talents show that we must work, for we are to double our talents. Studying and believing alone does not open the door. We must comply with all the requirements, pay the price, in other words, and we cannot steal the oil. Those desiring the certificate of fellowship must pay the price. It does take time and effort, and the individual alone can determine how soon he can get his certificate, for it all depends on how soon he can pay the price. We individually must watch and pray and be ready always, for we know not the day and hour of our personal visitation, to have bestowed upon us God's mark and seal for eternity. Therefore, be ready always. And on that, we attach our signature to the application. And we attest before God and man that we are striving with all our power to overcome. And all that is captured on the application form is summarized, just a summary of a lot that is contained in the shepherd's message. So when we sign, we are attesting that we are going to work for God. And now the group leaders, for those who are in a group, endorse the applicant's signature to certify that, as far as I know, this applicant is striving to live all the tenets that is on the application form. And for us here at Bashan, the policy going forward will be that the supervisors will be co-signing for the applicants that are in their department. Are we clear? For us who reside here at Bashan, the supervisors will be signing for those who are in their respective departments. And more information will be coming out about that in the near future. So, I have 2 minutes, and I will leave you with a few thoughts to meditate on. All Davidians whose certificate of fellowship has promptly expired are requested to promptly communicate their desire for renewal of the same. All Davidians whose certificate of fellowship has promptly expired are requested to promptly communicate their desire for renewal of the same. So all of us are encouraged to send in our fellowship certificate application. All of us. And I close with this statement. From Bashan Newsletter, January 1994, page 4. Application for fellowship. We urge all to strive to become accredited members of the association this year. For those who have never held a certificate, determine that will be the first year that you will do so. You may start right now to restudy the message and live out its principles. Pay the price so that you may effectually and faithfully receive and retain the fellowship card. Be inspired with the knowledge that if the angels hold golden cards, and the Lord in his inscrutable wisdom is directing his people to hold a fellowship card in this Vanguard Association, then we are placed on a level with these heavenly beings, so to speak, and this should encourage and motivate us to hold and keep the fellowship. May God bless you all, and may we strive to be faithful. Brother Dodd, I turn over to you, sir.